Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. I must say bom dia and say obrigado to Floene for hosting us, Eurogas, here in Lisbon. It's a great pleasure to be back here. And we really are in one of the parts of Europe where the gas industry is really leading innovation and looking forward to the future of what our sector can offer. I'm James Watson, Secretary General of Eurogas. Eurogas is delighted to work with Floene and also with other partners in the region. And we are very keen to see how renewable gases can grow, particularly in Portugal. Today we have a fantastic set of experts who will be giving their views on various themes that are important to our sector. We will indeed be looking at the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, but also we'll be looking at the growth of renewable and low-carbon gases in the region. These are the topics that drive the gas sector across Europe today, and Portugal is no exception. As I said, this is one of the regions which is leading the way, especially when we think of things like green hydrogen, but also has great potential in biomethane. Indeed, for me, I'm not going to spend too long speaking about the subjects because we do have the experts. But I will say that for me, it is always great to be in Portugal, and I really do appreciate the efforts that are made here in what is a relatively young gas country, and therefore, with its youth, there's great optimism, and optimism for the future is exactly what our sector should have. Without further ado, I would like to invite our partners for the event, Floene, and their CEO, Chief Executive Officer, Gabriel Sousa, to come and join me on stage and to give a welcome address. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the Eurogas annual regional conference that will be held in Lisbon, with a focus on Portugal under the energy transition and the role of renewable gases. First of all, I would like to thank to Eurogas in the person of the President, Didier, and also the Secretary General, James Watson, for choosing Portugal to organize this important Eurogas event. We are delighted to receive you in Portugal when so many important developments are taking place, and also the sense of urge that we really feel for renewable and green molecules to increase. For Floene, being the largest gas distributor in Portugal, with circa 70% of the gas distribution market, it's a real pleasure to be member of the Eurogas Association, recognizing the important work that the association has been developed in the last years. We all want to contribute to make, to build, and also to see improvements in the process of reducing emissions. And I believe three relevant topics need to be clearly addressed. The first one, that James already addressed, is to recognize the specificities of different regions, of different countries. And different regions or countries, they will have different challenges, considering the side on the energy demand, also the side on energy sources, and also on the side of different stages of development in terms of infrastructures. Portugal was one of the last countries to receive natural gas, and this gives us now the opportunity of having the most modern gas network in Portugal, which is very nice context to develop faster the renewable gases, namely with hydrogen injection. A second relevant topic to address is to diversify our sources of renewable energy and diversify the solutions for energy use. It's becoming clear there is not a silver bullet. There is not only one solution that suits properly all the challenges. We have all seen in the past the risk of putting too many or all the eggs in the same basket. So we really need to avoid that mistake again, and we really need to diversify the solutions for green energy. We shall use in the most efficient way the infrastructures that are available avoiding huge investments that will be required in a scenario of 100% electrification, and also avoiding the huge investments that will be required on the consumption side to change all the equipments if we go in this pathway. The third topic that I would like to highlight is also to reduce the dependency on external sources, aiming to improve the endogenous sources that we have on the energy sector. It's amazing how it's possible to reduce emissions, at the same time providing security of supply, and also at the same time reducing dependency from external sources. Also, on top of all of these positive contexts, it is also possible, when we talk about biomethane, to have a positive effect also on other parts of our society, considering the fact that we are contributing to solve a huge problem of our society related with waste management and waste emissions. Portugal was one of the first countries to present a national strategy for hydrogen, and I believe Portugal is now speeding up the process to achieve an ambitious strategy also for biomethane, because it's becoming really clear that biomethane will be a first step to have renewable and green molecules in the energy system. At Floene, we are working hard on the processes to check and confirm that our gas network is ready to receive renewable gases. And we have also been working hard and engaging with all the renewable gas producers and also with the Portuguese customers to facilitate the process and speed up the process of renewable molecules injection in the gas system. Near to Lisbon, we are currently operating a project that is now operating with a blend of 12–15% of hydrogen with natural gas. And in the first quarter of 2024, we will be operating this project with 20% of blending hydrogen and natural gas. At the same time, we are participating and evaluating the regional and local sources of renewable gases. And it's very important to share with all of you that we can really achieve a 100% renewable gas network in Portugal to provide the demand that we have. So in this context, and really thinking that the future will have renewable electrons and renewable molecules, and this will allow us and our society to have renewable energy for all our consumption. I wish you all a very nice meeting and a useful debate, and I would like just to close also thanking to the teams of Eurogas and Floene to arrange everything so that we can have today this meeting with all of you. Thank you all once again, and I wish you a nice meeting.
Thank you, Gabriel. And indeed, you touched on many of the key elements that I think make Portugal such an interesting place to be holding the conference this year, and very, very important that even beyond the great innovation you've shown in leadership in green hydrogen is the potential that you also have in biomethane in this area, which remains by and large untapped. In any case, it is my next great pleasure to invite the President of Eurogas, Executive Vice President of ENGIE, of course ENGIE being one of the largest and most important gas-oriented companies, energy companies they will say, and it is a great pleasure for us in Eurogas to be led by Didier. And I would be very happy if you would take the stage and give your views on behalf of Eurogas. Thank you. Good morning, Didier.
Thanks and good morning to all. First, I would like to thank our partners, Floene, for inviting us and for making this conference possible. And it's a delight for me to be here and just say a few words as an introduction to the conference. First, you may know that yesterday the so-called trilogue between Commission, Council and European Parliament came to an understanding about the new gas and hydrogen directive, apparently not yet on the regulation. It's good news because we need a bit of stability in legislation. Unfortunately, we have had so many pieces of legislation touching on the gas industry in the past few years that at some point in time we need to be able to build on existing legislation, be confident that they will stay for a few years and that we can make our economic decision based on that. The combination of the Fit for 55, the gas and hydrogen package, the REPowerEU, each of them coming with different pieces of legislation, has been just too much to digest. And to be honest, even with Eurogas working very hard and checking everything, we are not sure all this legislation will be consistent together. But we are making our best to make it work, and we hope for some stabilization. We also have to remember that obviously the war of Russia into Ukraine was a major disruption of our world and of the gas industry. And I must say that some countries were better prepared than others in that respect. And I must say that in that respect, Portugal, by building the Sines LNG terminal in due time, had the possibility, like other countries, to import LNG in a stable way during this crisis. Contrary to some European countries, we were short of LNG import capacity and were terribly affected. Despite that, we must recognize that most of Europe paid an incredibly high price for its gas during this crisis, and we must not be complacent. Yes, we managed this crisis without major catastrophe like the collapse of the network and things like that. But at the end of the day, our customers in Europe did suffer, and no industry can thrive when the customers are suffering. So still now, the price of gas in Europe is still twice and a half what it used to be during the previous decade. And it's far too expensive for many industries. So we still need to act in order to bring the cost of gas back in line with what the European industry and the European customers can afford. And I take this opportunity to say clearly that when some people say that we should ban any Russian LNG from the European port, they are just not fully aware of what they are saying. Because first, the Russian has proven their capacity to transfer LNG ship-to-ship offshore Murmansk, which means that if we ban LNG from Russia into European ports, they will transfer ship-to-ship in Murmansk, ship their LNG to Asia, and it will not change anything to their revenue. So it will be a shooting in our own foot without any visible outcome on Russia. And we should be aware of that and be prudent about what we say on this topic. So just how to ensure independency and move to renewable gas? Well, there are two ways. One is low carbon and green hydrogen. And in this respect, Portugal is showing the way compared to other countries. You have mentioned, Gabriel, this experience about blending hydrogen into the distribution gas network. I heard also that you are working on a full hydrogen distribution network experience, which will be of great interest to the rest of Europe. And generally speaking, you have needs for very high temperature energy in the industry, and clearly green and low carbon hydrogen is part of the solution. So we very much welcome the efforts of Portugal in developing this solution. And the second way to decarbonize and ensure independency as far as gas is concerned is biomethane and renewable gas. In that respect, a lot remains to be done. in the whole of Europe, but also in Portugal. As obvious solution, one of the first things which should be done is collect the naturally emitted methane from old coal mines, from waste deposits, landfills, and so on, but also to collect all the agricultural waste which may be emitting methane spontaneously into the atmosphere, to bring in into methanizer so as to make methane which can be injected into the grid. I don't want to be too long, but I know that Portugal is also working on this part, on biomethane, and I heard that public review of biomethane strategy will be launched very soon. I wish that it will be a success and that it will allow Portugal to develop biomethane. So to finish, I want to thank again Floene for organizing this conference and for your help, and I wish the best to the gas industry in Portugal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Didier. And indeed, I will reiterate that, of course, in Eurogas, we're fully open to dialogue with all serious stakeholders. And thanks for the points as well, Didier. I think we touched on very important elements. There's also and the important role that Portugal has played in security of supply in general during the crisis that we faced in the last 18 months. So we must also remember that, as well as the great potential that we have for renewable gases in the region. I think that we are now going to have a keynote speech. Unfortunately, Maria de Graça Carvalho could not join us today in person, but she has been very kind to record us a good message. She is, of course, a member of the European Parliament's ITRE committee, the so-called Industry and Energy Committee, but she has also been leading some of the most important files that we've been dealing with, like the electricity market design and indeed the REMIT files. So she has a lot of very important views on what our sector should and can be doing. So without further ado, I think if we can roll the video, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Good morning. I would like to start to thank the organizers of this conference, Eurogas and Floene, for the kind invitation to do a presentation in the beginning of your conference. Unfortunately, due to my work in the European Parliament, I could not be in Lisbon with you, so I have asked to record my presentation and send you this video. I will concentrate on the legislative work that we are doing in the European Parliament in the decarbonization of the society, and especially the decarbonization of industry, and the role that the renewable gases has in this decarbonization. As you all know, this term of the European Commission and the European Parliament, these 5 years that are complete next year with the European elections in June, have been characterized mainly for the green transition and the digital transition, what we call the twin transition, the Green Deal. So the Green Deal is not only an environmental agenda, it's the economic and the political agenda that was proposed by President von der Leyen and was assumed and adopted by the European Parliament and the European Council. So this was in 2019, and in 2020 there was, for the first time, and I think the first time at a global level, a law that is the climate law that make the objectives that were including in the strategy, in the Green Deal strategy, make these objectives part of a law, so obligatory. And these are reduction of the CO2 and the CO2 equivalent emissions by 2030. We have to reduce 55%, and in 2050, European Union should become climate neutral. So very ambitious targets, especially the target for 2030, difficult to achieve, so we have to work hard, and difficult to achieve mainly because we need to use the existing technologies. 2030 is 73 months away, so there is no time for developing new technologies. We need to make use of what we have already ready in the market. So it's the reason that it makes much more difficult than, in my opinion, than the 2050, that we still have time to push for science, for innovation, to develop new technologies for the sectors that are more difficult to decarbonize, such as some of the industrial sectors and some of the transport sectors like aviation and shipping. So, following this climate law in 2020, we had the Fit for 55 that went through the different sectors of the economy and society and present directives and regulation that show us the way how to achieve these targets that are included in the climate law. So the Fit for 55 is a packet that contains about 30 directives and regulations that we have been working in the European Parliament. There is only 2 or 3 that we have not concluded. So an intensive work in the different parts of the decarbonization of the society. For the first time, the European Commission didn't concentrate in the decarbonization process in industry and electricity energy production. That was mainly in the past. The tradition was mainly to target energy, electricity production and industry. In this packet, we have almost all areas of the society included, from the buildings, all the ways of transport, forest, agriculture. So we are considering the contribution of all sectors of the economy and society for the decarbonization. A very complete packet that we have finalized most of the directives and the regulation, and I will briefly touch the ones that I consider more relevant for your conference. Starting with the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, that the Commission, the European Commission has proposed 40% of renewables for 2030, and the Parliament has increased this ambition for 45%. And in the end, during the negotiations between Parliament and the Council, the end result, because this one is already finished, all the negotiations, everything, all the approvals, is 42.5% in obligatory, plus 2.5% that totalize the 45, but this 2.5% is according to the conditions of each country, so are not obligatory like the 42.5%. It will depend on the conditions that each member state can fulfill this extra 2.5%. One very important point that I think that I'm very happy that was included was one amendment from mine, is that inside this 42.5% there is a sub-target of 5% for innovative renewable energy. So this sub-target will give a push to innovation, to research, that is very important. But was not only the target, that is the revision of the directive touch. Also, it touched the question of accelerated proceedings and permitting. It's a lot of provisions in order to have a faster decision process for the renewable projects. That is so important that we have these projects in place in 2030. Also the biomass, there was a big discussion of biomass. Biomass in the end was considered a renewable source, and this is important because biomass contributes to 60% of the renewable energy in Europe, and it is a very important source of renewable energy in Europe. One point that this directive touches, and is very important for this conference, is the hydrogen. And there is a target for the hydrogen in industry, so the hydrogen used in the industry needs to be of 42% needs to be of renewable origin. So hydrogen that is produced with renewable electricity out of the water, electrolysis of water, and 60% of the hydrogen needs to be of renewable origin in 2035. So we have 42% in 2030 and 60% in 2035. Another point that is important and very important for my own group, the EPP, we have a target of 5.5% for advanced biofuels in the share of energy supply for the transport sector. And within this target, there is a minimum required of 1% for renewable fuels of non-biological origin. So this is important because one characteristic of our group, political group, in all these files, we have fight for the technological neutrality. We are of the opinion that electrification is going to be the main source of decarbonization for industry, for the buildings, for transport, but should not be the only one, and most important, should not be the political, the policymakers that will state or make obligatory one technology versus the others. We should be, as much as possible, technological neutral and leave the actors in the market to choose what is the best way to decarbonize. And we have had this position in all the files. In some of the files we were more successful than the others, but is the position of my political group. Also important, and you will discuss that in your conference, is the revision of the Directive of Energy Efficiency, that we will have 40% in the final consumption of the energy by 2030 and 42.5% in the primary energy. These values compare with the reference year of 2007. Together with this is another very important revision of the directive that is one that is still not completely ready. We are in trialogues, we are negotiating, it's a difficult one, that is the energy efficiency in buildings. So this will push for the rehabilitation of buildings in Europe, but it's a difficult one to negotiate due to the different characteristics of the buildings across Europe and the amount of the financing that this directive will require for the private sector and the public sector. So we hope to be able to finish this directive. It's a directive that we need to be very careful. We have myself, I have introduced several amendments with some exceptions for historic buildings, for isolated buildings, for buildings that are only occupied certain months per year. So I think that is important that also we have introduced, and I hope that it stays, that the local authorities have a say to these exceptions, so they can decide which part of their towns or their communities will have an exception of this directive. On the transport sector, there is a lot of news, and one that the EPP has voted against, but it passed, is the prohibition to sell new vehicles of internal combustion engine by 2035, because the objective in Europe is to have zero emissions in the transport by 2050. But we were not happy with this because it goes against our principle of technological neutrality, and we think that internal combustion engine, that is one technology where Europe is at the forefront, could continue with other kind of fuels, renewable fuels, low emission fuels, but was not that the position of other political groups, so we lost this vote. Also in the aviation and in maritime, in aviation and maritime, sustainable fuels will have a very important role because they are very difficult to electrify these modes of transport, or even impossible. Still no solution for the electric plane or electric ship. So for the aviation, we have set minimal percentage of sustainable aviation fuels that are considered the biofuels, recycled carbon fuels, and the sustainable aviation fuel. We have set 2% in 2025, growing until 2050, where we need to have at least 70%. Inside this, we have one sub-target of 1.2% of synthetic fuels, like e-kerosene. For shipping, we have a different kind of target. It's the target of reduction of the emissions, and we have 2% of reduction in 2035, growing until 2050, where we have 80% of the reduction. In this plenary, just yesterday, we had the legislation for strengthening the CO2 emission performance targets in the heavy-duty vehicles. And here, in this file, the EPP has managed to push their position of technological neutrality. And this legislation includes buses, trucks, trailers, and we have included amendments that have saying that we should have all the technologies at our disposal, and we have won these amendments. So we have introduced the concept of technological neutrality in this legislation, what I think that is very important. Also, we have won the amendment that introduced the concept of carbon correction factor that is also important for the industry. But apart from 54-55, we had another legislation that is very interesting and important for you, what you are discussing today. That was a consequence of the Ukrainian invasion by Russia and the crisis of energy that followed that invasion. That is the REPowerEU. And the REPowerEU had as objective to be more independent or to be completely independent of the supply of energy from Russia. And we have in that REPowerEU, one of the objectives is exactly diversifying the gas supplies. So not only to have natural gas, but for example, there is one target that is doubling the EU ambition in biomethane. So there is a biomethane plan that is so important to the participants of this conference, and it was introduced and it was approved in the REPowerEU. The other point that also very important to you is that REPower introduced what we call the hydrogen accelerator. So also we reinforce the targets that I have already expressed on the hydrogen, the use of hydrogen in the industry. It confirmed that targets, but also has set ambitious targets for the hydrogen, renewable hydrogen production in Europe, and also for the importing renewable hydrogen from other parts of the world. It has a whole plan of infrastructure projects in order that Europe can produce 10 million tons of hydrogen and import the same amount, all from renewable origin. Also increase the budget of one partnership of Horizon Europe that I was rapporteur, that is the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. It has increased the budget and increased the number, what we have called and have we introduced in this partnership, that are the hydrogen valleys. The hydrogen valleys are regions where hydrogen is produced and where hydrogen is consumed, and has doubled this, introduced more 200 hydrogen valleys for industry. I know that this partnership has already started open calls for proposals, and the first results of the first call are already public, and I'm quite happy that Alentejo has won an hydrogen valley, one of the first in Europe. So it's very good that Portugal has is in the forefront on this on the hydrogen that is so important. Having said that, and with the background of the research also in the area of hydrogen, and as a legislator in these areas, I have to say that the best approach for hydrogen in this moment is to have a reasonable scale of projects, not a very ambitious scale. There is not even technology ready for that, not electrolyzers in the market available for huge projects, and we need to have a reasonable scale, and we do not have yet approved technology for the transport of hydrogen at long distance. So this hydrogen that is produced should be, as much as possible, used near the place where it is produced. And it should be, because it's expensive, it's complex to produce the hydrogen, it should be used where other sources cannot do their role. So if you can electrify and use renewable electrification, you should not use hydrogen. So it will be important for certain industries, for process industries, certain industries that really requires hydrogen in their process, and for certain means of transport that are not easily to electrify. So I've given with a very short summary what we are working, all the challenge that we have to do in 73 months in many areas, using the technologies that we have, at the same time developing new technologies, because after 2030 we have the targets for 2035, 2040, 2050. So a lot of work for researchers, entrepreneurs, industry, policymakers. So big challenge, a lot of work, but let's work together and let's do it. Thank you very much for your attention.
for giving this very important speech. And indeed, she has highlighted the huge amount of legislative work that is currently undergoing in Brussels. And indeed, it's been a record. I don't think anybody has ever seen so much legislation before. So it is with great respect we have for our MEPs for getting through such a lot of works, especially since the invasion of Ukraine. I would also say that she made some very good points about the approach that she needs to be taken. Indeed, we should not pick winners. We should have technology neutrality, and that's something that we believe strongly in Eurogas, because we think that it is a role for all technologies to play in decarbonisation. I do believe that we would see the roles of hydrogen and biomethane as well being very strong. I do not believe there are many people at left that believe that you can only electrify your way to victory in climate change. We have to build on many pillars. And I need to notice recently as well, though it's not mentioned here, that the European Commission is now moving also in the direction of carbon capture and storage as a fourth pillar for our decarbonisation strategy. In any case, she did mention one important piece of legislation, which is the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And that is one of the outstanding pieces of legislation which is still being discussed. And our first panel will indeed touch on that. But it is my great pleasure to be able to stand down from formal duties this morning now and hand over to somebody who is extremely well placed, probably better than I am, to lead the discussions. We're very happy to have Rosalia Amormim with us this morning, an experienced journalist of over 20 years' experience, indeed editor-in-chief of one of Portugal's biggest daily newspapers, which I think is Dinheiro Viva, if I'm not mistaken, and is currently the editor-in-chief of TSF, the radio show, so branching from newspapers into radio. So please give a round of applause to Rosalia, who will take over the conference from here on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks to James, thanks to the organization for the invitation, of course. Welcome to the Eurogas and Floene conference. This is an event dedicated to the focus on Portugal, the energy transition and the role of renewable gases. Well, and today, with this context of REPowerEU, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, and the proposal for a regulation on methane emissions reduction, the conference will address the states of play of the Portuguese gas market. And with me will be Paulo do Nascimento Cabral, Advisor, Azores and Energy Permanent Representation of Portugal. Please, Paulo, join me. Is there. To Rita Pinho Rodrigues, Director for Corporate Affairs and Board Member of DECO Protest. Please welcome. Sit here next to me. Hi Rita, welcome to the stage. Also Nuno Moreira, CEO of Eurogas. And after that, please, Nuno, welcome to the stage. After that, we'll have Federica Sabati, maybe later, with us online. And now, to talk about this topic, we will start with these three speakers. To all the audience at the room and in stream, I have a challenge. Please send some questions to the Q&A box. I have the Q&A box here with me to put some questions to the speakers. If you want, of course, in the end, I will put well, I will try to put all the questions. Let's see if we have enough time. The energy performance of buildings, methane emissions and the role of energy grids will be our topic in this morning. And I will start with Paulo. How can we increase the energy performance on buildings? How can we do it faster?
Thank you, Rosario. I would like to start by thanking the Eurogas and also Floene for the invitation, for the kind invitation, and congratulate for the actuality of this event and the theme, because we are facing, as was just said, a time of intense legislation and trying to close the Spanish presidency with a lot of files that are still ongoing. And the PPD, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, is one of them. We expect to have the last trilogue on the 7th of December. There is some points still open. And also on methane, we just got the final agreement with the Parliament also, the methane emissions on the energy sector, and also on the grids. That is one topic of the debate of this morning. We expect that Commissioner Simpson today, in the course of the PCI Project of Common Interest Days, will announce this action plan for the grids. Regarding the BPD, well, we have huge ambitions there. It will be a very complicated, as Professor Graça Carvalho just said, very complicated file, because we will have to fulfill a lot of targets and sub-targets. First of all, we have to understand why this revision is on course. The main reason is that the building sector represents almost 40% of the total energy consumption in Europe. And this is a way to reduce our dependency from energy factors from Russia. I understand what was said by the president of Eurogas. I totally understand it. Of course, we have to do it in a way that we cannot put at risk the security of supply, for sure. We have to take into account the price of gas for the Europeans and tackle the energy poverty, for sure. But also this invasion of Ukraine by Russia led us to develop a huge package to try to diversify the energy sources to Europe. And this is why we started to see inside Europe which areas we could develop or we could improve in order to reduce the consumption, the total demand of gas or other energy factors. And one of them is the buildings. For instance, I just said it's 40% of all the energy consumption. It's 38% of the greenhouse gases emissions in Europe. 38%, it's a lot. And we also have to see that 75% of all the building stock in Europe doesn't have any energy efficiency. So we have to tackle these issues, and starting by creating a new wave of renovation. And this was launched in 2020. Now it has to be accelerated. And in one hand, in the other hand, we have to take the leading part of the leading role from the public sector. One of the main targets are directed to the public sector, because we have to be honest, and the private sector will have a lot of difficulties to put these targets on practice. And this is why we also pretend to sign on the next Energy Council on 19th of December a coalition of energy efficiency for financing. So this is very important for us also, because we need to get some investments from the private sector to tackle all of these challenges. For instance, some of the targets that we have on EPPD will be to renovate at least 3% of all the public, to renovate in order to achieve the energy efficiency in 3% in all the buildings. We'll have some targets until 2033, 2040, 2050. We'll have also the deployment of solar panels on the rooftops. This is a result from the REPowerEU package that we need to deploy and take the advantage of all the rooftops in Europe to put these solar panels. And for sure, there is some restrictions in our case that we have to address, like historical buildings and structural issues that we need to take into account. But this is an EPPD. We need to ensure the insertion of these renewable gases on this process, especially taking into account that we will have a huge demand on the energy consumption at the first place, because we need to adapt all these buildings to this new reality. I would also like to say that it was referred biomethane was a good way forward, and the European Commission in REPower set a target for 35 PCMs of biomethane, and there was a review for Portugal saying that if we have to explore all our full potential, we could reduce up to 11% of the imports of gas. So this is also a very good principle to see that we have a lot of potential also in biomethane. Regarding the emissions of methane, I will just pass by very quickly, and then I can...
yes, in the second round, we have more questions to you. Rita, in the first 5 minutes, could you share with us your vision about this challenge to the consumers?
Yes. First, thanks for the invitation. We are very proud to be here, because very often we discuss a lot about things that impact to consumers, but we don't listen to consumers. And so to be here with such a specialist on the panel, it's very important for consumers organizations. What we think for us is clear, and we are very aligned with the words that were said in the beginning, to reduce, diversify, and we try to follow the consumers in order to give them all the information. The sustainability is something that is very important on our daily life. Even for consumers, we are the first country in the world that has the National Day of Sustainability. Why? And it was DEC Protest, the consumer organization, that asked the government to give us that day. Why? Because we think that there's no discussion. To be a consumer, we have to be sustainable. And sustainable is not only to look for the environmental issues, but also the financial part and the social part. So one of the things that for us is very important is that we must give the information to consumers in order to allow them to make the right choice. And one of the things that I would like to share with all of you is that we speak a lot about the energy transition. Our last survey, we asked to consumers if they know what energy transition is. And the truth is that 58% of consumers that represents our country answer that they don't know, or they listen the word, but they don't know what it means. Wow. So the first thing that I think is important and is the responsibility of
Do we
all
need
of
literacy for this topic?
I think that we must invest in order to explain to consumers what it is and what they can do. Because it's very, let me say, fashion to say that, of course, we have to be green and sustainable, but we have to explain to consumers on a very practical way, and I think that we have this responsibility, but also all of us here, industry, government, all of us have to explain on a very practical way how can we take part of this transition. And of course, that to do this, we have to not only give the information, but involve consumers. Because for consumers, all this discussion is very interesting. The only thing that he wants to know is, how can I have my daily life with comfort? How can I pay my energy bill? And this is something that if we want to reduce and if we want to diversify, we have to involve the ones that we will work for. We are trying to give all this information to consumers because very often we are not speaking about losing comfort. We are speaking about changing behaviors. And this is something that's key for us. One of the things that for us is important, and for sure that we will speak it later on, is that we understood and we accept that the consumer has to take part, but the consumer doesn't have to be the one who pays the bill in the end. He has to take part, he has to make the effort, for sure. But we have also to be sure that we don't let no one behind. It doesn't mean that we have to invest a lot to answer on the same way to the consumer needs. This is something that very often we decided to give the same to all of, in order to be accessible to all. To be accessible to all is not to give the same kind of energy, the same kind of answer to all the consumers, because the needs of someone that is on the city are completely different from the ones who are out of
Yes,
course.
of
So
course.
this is something that is key, and I would like to say on a very clear way, because sometimes you look to the consumer organizations like the ones who are asking everything to everybody on a very low, not expensive way. For us, on a very clear way, the answers has to be different. The only thing that we have to give to consumers is the possibility to have the answer for their consumer needs. And this is something that is also difficult to adapt and to give the right answer to them.
We need freedom, information, and we need to choose.
And we want to take part of it.
Yes.
We are
Let me introduce Nuno to the conversation. In 5 minutes, Nuno, what are your concerns?
Yes, thank you, Rosalia. First of all, to Diogo, who is not present, but thank you, and to Gabriel. Also, Eurogas. I met Didier 2 months ago in Singapore. I'm not sure you remember. We visited an island, very sustainable island in Singapore from ENGIE. A very nice example of what should be done. I'm here with Double Rose, Sonar Gas DSO, and Eurogas, the gas production. Indeed, the time now is to make actions. And I believe that from the point of view of DSOs, from the point of view of gas distribution systems, we are prepared to improve the energy on houses and on buildings. But there is a gap between what is written on rulemaps and what is being done. I have an example for you all. Every day and today, we are changing. So Sonar Gas is distributing gas in 34 municipalities in the north of Portugal. And every day, today also, we are changing heat electrical systems with gas boilers. Okay, we are taking out new ones because nobody has money to pay electricity to boil water. Does make sense. So you can write any rulemaps, any law, whatever, but in the end, consumer will do their part, and their part is to. Of course, they are doing better because with good efficiency gas boilers, there is a solution. And why we believe on that? The second part will be biomethane. Why we believe on that? Because of course there are several parts of economy that cannot be served by electricity. We know that industry, high temperature in industry, and also heavy mobility. Does it make sense to build a network from the origin to the industry and no connections with the buildings that pass it through? Does make sense. So that's what we've been doing the last 25 plus years. Besides that, in our group we have experience on biomethane. We have a project that you all can visit, very welcome, in the north, Mirandela, where we already produce biomethane and inject on the grid. We hope that with this project we can reach 100% biomethane grid in a small network. We are used to gas people are used to change gas since ever. So in Lisbon 25 years ago we had city gas that has hydrogen, 20% of hydrogen. So we are used to change to propane, then to natural gas, then go back to hydrogen. That's not a question for us, and we will do it gladly. So considering the introduction of biomethane, I think the gas in buildings will have a new role, and probably with economic efficiency. That's what I'm talking about, and also it will be a great or a good opportunity for us to be part of this renewable transition. And transition will happen when people start the consumption of a different energy. If we don't change the way people consume energy, there will be no transition at all. And I believe that with with the right incentives, or I believe that without the wrong incentives, people will change their behaviors, and we'll have success using energy on buildings. And again, it doesn't make any sense to forbid the use of gas in buildings like it's being almost planned, it's being thought about. It doesn't make sense at all, because it's just a technology aspect and nothing else.
Paulo, do you agree, or this is the end of the era of using natural gas in buildings? It's a question and a provocation.
Exactly. It's the right place to answer for that question. I think that what was said about the technological neutrality is important, and we have to be sure, and without any afraid to say it, we will always need gas. As you just said, there is some sectors of industries and some sectors that cannot be replaced by gas or hydrogen, renewable gases. And one second thing that I would like to stress is that the energy mix is from the responsibility of the member states. It was not imposed by the European Commission or the European Union. So the energy mix is the responsibility of the member states. So if the member states want to use it, you will be allowed to it. The only question is that there will be no financing, no public financing to this kind of technologies. That, I believe, is the main issue that we need to address right now. The question is it's quite complex, but the answer is quite simple, because we are dealing with the need to renovate all these buildings in all these sectors. We need to address the specific needs, the time of producing energy in a way that is accessible to everyone in a cheaper way and independent of the sources will not be the future. We need to be more target-oriented production of energy. For instance, one of the things that we have on EBPD is the one-stop shops. So the consumers could address to these one-stop shops and see the best solution for their cases. The other thing that we have on EBPD is the possibility to transform the consumers in prosumers. They can produce their own energy, because we need to achieve the zero emissions buildings and the zero emissions building stock until 2050. So we need to work in several sources. So all of this together will have a huge role for that. I don't think that in the near future we will be able to ignore or to cut the...
Or to declare the end of the era of gas.
Yeah, I don't think that it will happen. I don't think that will ever happen, but it's a personal opinion. And for sure, the renewable gases will always have a future on that. But the main issue, and I want to recall to everyone, is that because of this invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we need to see how can we reduce the needs for imports on energy factors. This is the main issue. And I usually say that if we didn't get this tragic event, the energy efficiency or the energy transition will still be on paper, and everything will talk about that, and no one knows what is going to happen. And we have time for that, but for now, because of this energy and this dramatic situation, unfortunate situation, we had the need to accelerate all of this process.
Paulo, sorry to interrupt you, but Federica Sabati is ready already now, Secretary General of European Heating Industry. Welcome, Federica. Are you listening to me? Yes. We don't listen to you. Not yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Welcome, good morning. Would you like to share with us in 5 minutes your vision about this topic?
Yes, and thanks for the invitation, and sorry I cannot be with you physically. Unfortunately, I had a little health problem, but I'm happy at least to share with you some thoughts online. I mean, talking about the energy performance of buildings is actually quite a technical regulation, or actually it's a directive, quite a technical topic, but what is incredible is how such a technical thing has become very political and has even become a security topic. So, and it has been mentioned before, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has really changed the perspectives that we have in Europe regarding the way we were thinking of doing our transition. And so to the urgency of the climate goal, and that's an urgency because, you know, the targets that the European Union has set for itself are just around the corner in terms of time. You know, 2030 and 2050 are you know, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So the urgency to the urgency of the climate goals has been added the urgency of the Russian invasion, and this has made this topic very political. Even technologies have been politicized, and I don't know if some of you have followed the discussions in Germany about the decarbonization of buildings, specifically which heating systems you should or should not install in people's homes. This has become a hugely political issue, and it's the first time that we see that. Certainly, me representing the industry that manufactures heating systems has been quite a strong development in that direction, and not always a very positive direction. Now the EPBD, so the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, talks about mainly the energy transition of old buildings, or the ones that are the majority of buildings. This is important to say because new builds tendentially are very easy to decarbonize, in the sense that it's probably something that you can start from the beginning. But when you have already an installed stock of buildings, that's where the difficulty lies. But this is also where the difficulty lies in terms of which technologies you're going to put in those, which fuel you're going to use, and also how to bring. And this was mentioned just before. I'm very glad that you mentioned it. How is the consumer? How is the end user going to play its part? So from the side of heating technologies, we have our approach is really a multi-technology one. We see that Europe is very different. So what works in Portugal will maybe not work in Sweden. What works in the southern part of Italy will possibly work maybe in the south part of of Spain, but not necessarily north of France. So you need to have a multi-technology approach. The good news from our side is that technologies for heating and for delivering actually climate neutral buildings, sustainable buildings are there. The problem remains on how to, what we would call the market uptake. So how to convince, how to let people know that they are available, and how to convince them to change their old systems to new, more efficient ones. And it's a question of, awareness. It's a question of money. It's a question of understanding what fits in your place and what doesn't. And all of these things have not yet been solved. And this is why the EPBD is still an open, still open. And we are expecting indeed in the next couple of weeks to know more about what the European policymakers are doing. But there is already a tendency now in Brussels, you can hear it more and more, that says, okay, we have done the green part of the deal, and now we need to do the deal. And a lot of us are interpreting this as, how do we actually implement in concretely the green objectives that we have given for ourselves, and how do we bring everybody that we didn't ask before, how do we bring everybody with us on this journey? Because it's a journey, it's a fast one, but it's still a journey that needs to happen from now until 2050.
Thank you, Federica. Thank you so much. Rita, this is a special topic for you. How to implement, and ask you to, if people want to use hydrogen in their homes, do you know if they want?
They
know enough about that. Maybe not.
This is the first issue. They know now a lot because of the news. They know the name, but they don't have clear what is the difference, why is better or not for their needs. So this is again an information issue that we have to work a little bit more. One of the things that we use to explain to consumers when we are trying to give them all the solutions, because we don't make the choice of consumers, we give the information in order to allow consumers to have the best choice, is, of course, the first question is it affordable? The second preoccupation is the security. And one of the things that we try to explain to consumers is that the first thing that he has to change or to evaluate is how much I need. How can I be the one who define the kind of cost that I'm going to have? This is something that is not normal for the consumer. And one
How
of
much I need in terms of power and costs, that's it?
Yes, because first, they don't have a really idea about the costs of energy that they pay. They don't understand the bill. They only know what the bank account shows on the
every month.
Every month, yeah. So, and one of the informations that we use very often is that the cheapest energy is the one that we don't use. And the question is, how can the consumers be the ones who define how much energy they need? It's something a little bit strange, but this is the first step to change behavior. Of course, that is not everything in the hands of consumers, but we used to say that you have to take part on the part that you can you can change. And this is something that is in the beginning of all the energy worries of consumers' worries, but it's something that we have and we must play an important role. The second part is, okay, now that you know what are your needs, let's look at the markets and look at the offer. And that part with the new energies, let me call like that, it's a little bit more difficult because we discuss a lot. We follow the technical dossier, of course, and we are always trying to see the opportunities, but for consumers it's not clear. And I think that we must use also this time in order to involve them, because the industry can offer the best solution if the consumer doesn't know them or doesn't have an idea they are going to follow.
There is no market. Yes, of course. No. What is coming next? Is there a need for hydrogen in buildings? A really need, in your opinion?
Yes, there is a need from hydrogen in gas networks. There's a need for biomethane in gas networks. And because I believe that gas will still play a good role, an efficient role in buildings, yes, there is. I will come back again to the reality. Heat pumps are lovely. Are things that work very well, but people doesn't buy it. Don't use it. You go to, let me say, Vorten or other store, electrical, and ask, what does people buy? People usually buy gas heaters, gas boilers, and now they are buying electrical heaters. That's much less efficient, much less efficient. That's the way things are going. I'm glad to talk after DECO, because that's the reality of rules. Europe love rules. They can do books and books of rules, and they will do it more. Books and books of rules, and they will do the rules for the rules and the rules for the rules for the rules. And but reality is that, of course, let consumer choose the best option and the best economical and feasible option. There's no place for heat pumps in almost more than 2/3 of the houses in Portugal, or the buildings. There's no place. There's not possible. Even the cost, the size, and of course the amount of energy consumed. That's why I believe also, thank you for your presentation, exactly there is no one solution for all Europe, and we are a continent, so we should have several solutions. Regarding hydrogen, yes, it is very easy. We are involved in 8 projects of production of hydrogen injection on the grid. We believe that's one of the very good solutions. We have till 20%. We saw there's no problem, and after that, of course, we change the way people consume. So hydrogen just have one thing. It's so extraordinary good that it's expensive. Everything that is extraordinary good is expensive, even 5-star hotels.
Yes, it's true. Paulo, how can Azores inspire Europe in this topic, in this battle?
Well, talking about specificities, of course, Azores is completely different because of the lack of the small insularity.
Yes.
The lack of market is very, very complicated. But I would like, if you allow me, to react to
Yes,
one or
of
two
course.
things. Regarding the hydrogen, as was just said, it's quite expensive. It could be quite expensive. Good things are expensive for sure. And I would just like to stress that we are preparing now in Europe these books of rules for the future hydrogen markets. And this is a huge step for us to start to create this global hydrogen market, and we are taking the lead on that. Not only to try to enhance the production inside Europe, to explore all our potential, but also through the memorandums of understanding with other countries in order to import some hydrogen for the needs that we expect to have on 2030. But this is a still ongoing process. And in this sense, I would like also to talk about another book of rules and rules of books, that is the methane regulation that we just approved recently with the Parliament. And this is one huge example of the strict actions and the very demanding actions that the companies and the member states will have to do in order to address these leaks, these methane leaks. We have to detect and repair when the leaks are detected, and under certain thresholds or above certain thresholds. I will not get into specificities, but I would like to stress one thing, that now we are making a path to try to get our international partners on board, applying to them the same conditions that we are applying here in Europe to our companies, to our producers. And this is very important because we have a chapter exclusively for the importers' requirements, to say to them that we don't want to put at risk the security of supply, but we need you to comply with these leaks of methane, with these global targets, climate targets. So this is a very important step, because until now we have to know that Europe is responsible around 7 to 8% of total global emissions, and if we don't act in a global way, our action will only impose sacrifices to the Europeans without so much impact in the world that we wanted to stress. So that's the main reason. And yesterday evening we reached an agreement with the Parliament on the directive of the gas package, but not on regulation. And this is a huge step forward in this hydrogen market. I only want to add another thing, is that for now the estimative is to have an investment around 600 billion still in this decade to improve the grids, electricity grids, because they are for now the main bottlenecks for energy transition. There is a lot of projects that occupy a lot of space on the grids, or potential space on the grids, and the grids cannot support all of this demand. And this is a huge problem that we will have in the near future. We are starting to have. And this is why we need to reinforce the investment on grids and infrastructure of distribution. And I totally agree with you. If we are building new infrastructures, we need to take the most advantage of it. So it makes all the sense. And this is one step, one thing that I believe that it will be critical in the near future until 2030, because it doesn't make any sense to continue to invest. Well, it makes sense, but it's a waste to invest in renewables and capacity of production if we cannot use it. So this is the only way that we can have electricity or energy in a lower prices to the consumers. And that's our main concern right now in EBBD also, is that we need to address energy poverty and the most vulnerable ones. And this is why we have some questions regarding the right to disconnect. We need to protect them. They cannot be disconnected in several conditions. And also we will have to adapt for the existing buildings, the MAPs, the minimum energy performance standards, that will need to work, because it's especially behavior change. So it's kind of psychological thing more than a technical issue for the beginning. And then with time we need to adapt their buildings, their houses, and we expect that the energy consumption of these houses will increase a little bit because they are not efficient. So if you try to turn them efficient, we need to increase the consumption in the first stage in order to get the consumption lower in the second stage. So there is a lot of challenges for now. On EBBD, we are facing, as my colleague just said, we think that it's more political than technical. It's true. It's kind of a question of the needs from the member states, or we have always this discussion of this technological neutrality, the low carbon versus renewables, the nuclear versus hydrogen, clean hydrogen versus hydrogen from nuclear sources. So I think that we are facing two critical issues right now. One is the political issue that we are starting to give a good sign to the world, and one of the example is the methane, that we are following the global pledge of methane to reduce the 30% of emissions until 2030. And the second one is to try to take into account the national specificities. And this is a huge challenge, because if we need to act as a European Union, we cannot have so many specificities. But on the other way, to continue to be European Union, we need to address those specificities.
And to implement too. In terms of political options, we will have a new government in March. What do you expect about the new government in Portugal in this topic of energy?
Two questions, very complicated ones. This is the second one. I expect, of course, the best government that we could have.
In terms of energy, do you expect something special?
In terms of energy transition, of course, a huge and a bet of energy transition, and of course, a huge...
we have to accelerate the implementation of transition?
I will not speak about that. I will only say that I hope that the priorities for the new government should be to reduce the emissions and to fulfill with the European targets.
Excellent. Nuno, what do you expect for the new government in March in terms of this topic of the energy transition? Would you like to share some advice to the new government?
My advice from industry is let us work.
Let us work. No more books and papers and rules.
Yeah, because I really believe that of course we need to schedule the behaviors, but I really believe that the industry makes its own auto-regulation because of the clients, because of the consumers. Okay? Without consumers, we are focused on consumers. Without consumers, we don't have business. So we must go to, and we know that people is worried about climate. Energy transition, we know that is a strange word, but climate is a good word. So what I expect that they listen to us, and also they we can show, or they see, what's the reality in Portugal with relation with energy and how we can progress. Let me just refocus in 1 minute. Hydrogen. There is a discussion. People normally say, oh, it's better to produce hydrogen near the consumption. And I say, why? Why don't we produce hydrogen near the pipe of gas and inject it on the gas grid and have consumption? It's really different.
It's a mix. This is a mix.
Yeah, it's really different. The situation where you have a factory that changes 100% to hydrogen, so no consumption of gas, 100% of hydrogen. Is there a difference between this situation and the other situation where the same amount of gas is not consumed all over the country? There is no, from the point of view of emissions, there is no difference. But there is one big difference, is that in the first position, you will use the electrical grid. On the second position, you will use the gas grid. And the costs of electrical grid compared to gas grid is 10 times more. That's why we believe gas grids have a future on hydrogen.
Okay, there's future for gas. Federica, how can your organization help to reduce the global warming of buildings? Would you like to share some examples with us?
Well, we have developed a lot of technologies. We have to work now together with, on the one side, obviously the policy makers to make sure that they know all of the technologies that are available for reducing, gas, actually gas mainly, and oil, or let's say fossil fuel use in buildings. And on the other side, we are cooperating already a lot with, the upstream, people that are sitting in the room with you, so the grid operators and the providers of the fuels, in order to make sure that there is compatibility. And when we're talking about hydrogen, for example, we are happy to say that we have worked quite well together and managed to have already appliances, heating appliances, that can work both with blends of hydrogen in the gas, when blended in the gas grid, up to 20%, or directly with 100% hydrogen. So that readiness from our side is there. We've also worked on the electricity side to provide heat pumps, all different types of heat pumps, hybrid heat pumps, which is a combination of a boiler and a smaller heat pumps that allows, much more flexibility to the grid, for example, to the electricity grid, so as to avoid power cuts, which we are seeing already in many cities, like in my own country, in Milan, when it's hot in the summer, big power cuts because of too much stress on the electricity grid, which is not strong enough. So we've worked on both sides, if you want. Now, I think what is important is that the policy framework allows these various solutions to actually flourish in the various parts of Europe, as they should, because, as you were saying, in Portugal, you might not use, well, you are not using so much space heating as, we are in Belgium, for example. So you will have to have different solutions that we are having here. And the policy framework, the EPBD, needs to allow that. Otherwise, you will not be able to do your own transition in a sustainable way, also economically. You will just not be able to deliver it. So you need to make sure that at the European level there is this open door, and EPBD is a way for that. Yeah. So it's important. It's an important piece of legislation. And then the way you're going to implement it in Portugal is probably going to be different from how we implement it here in Belgium. But that openness is absolutely necessary. And I have to say, this has not been the standard way of working of the European Commission. There's been much more a direction. We have to go only to electrification, because that will solve 90% of the problems of the buildings in Europe. And unfortunately, we see that this is not the case. So we need to have green gases, for example, which is hydrogen is one of them, but biomethane is another one that has a lot of big promise in a number of countries. So I think that leaving that door open to a multi-technology, multi-energy transition is fundamental to make the transition sustainable, and like was said before, to bring everybody behind, to not leave anybody behind, and bring everybody along. So I think that's the main message from a side of an association that represents all technologies, sustainable technologies for heating buildings today and in the future.
Federica, thank you so much. And the last question is for Rita, is from the audience. And the question is, what are DECO initiatives for educating consumers of the benefits of renewable energy?
We have lots of initiatives. First of all, with our magazine and our website, we have we have lots of subscribers. We represent the consumers, the Portuguese consumers, and we give them the information with the technical support that we have. We give the information in order to help them to have a more clear idea about these kind of issues. Another thing that we usually do is to go to the schools and involve the children because they are a key. They are key on this kind of. Trying to help the families to change behaviors, to have more idea about the types of energy. And we also have, we work also with some universities, always trying to get information, but also give our support and our, we have lots of data. We are also integrated on an international group. We take part of these discussions. We try to influence, of course, and make some lobby representing consumers. So we try to use these expertise in order to influence also the consumer behavior. But this is not enough. We have the clear idea that this is time to speed up the information and to involve consumers. They have to be in the center of the discussion, not because we are a consumer organization, but because the consumers are the final clients for all this kind of energy. So we have to put them in the center and to give them the information in order to give them to the responsibility to make the right choice. And this is not a kind of speech that I make that you have to do. I think that we all have to do it, and we have to speed up.
Rita, thank you so much. Information, as we know, it's an arm, it's power. Thank you, Paulo. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Nuno. Thank you, Federica. Thanks to all. We are made an interval now, and I invite you to take a short break. Thanks. Thank you so much for the invitation. The second panel is about transition to renewable and low carbon gases in the European Union and the region. This panel will discuss all of this potential, of course. We count with the dynamic audience, so please send us the questions to the Q&A box. And now, please join me at the stage, the speakers. Online, Bernd Cooper, Policy Officer, the Unit Decarbonization and Sustainability of Energy Sources from European Commission. To the stage, please, Nuno Fitas Mendes, CEO de Portuguese. Luís Monteiro, Home Comfort, Product Area Combustion da Bosch Termotecnologia. Bem-vindo, Luís, welcome. Rui Costa Neto, doctorate researcher from ENEST and professor from ESEL. And online, Camila Wachiega, Director of Energy and Infrastructure Policy, Hydrogen Europe. Welcome. First, each speaker will have 5 minutes to presentation to share our vision with us. After that, we discuss the topic. And I will start with Bernd. Bernd Kupke.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Very good. There were some technical issues in front of us a bit. First of all, thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I would like just to outline briefly what the view, or what in view of the Commission, renewable and low carbon gas have a role for achieving decarbonization in Europe. And there we have to keep in mind the strategy which the Commission has laid out for achieving complete decarbonization. And there we have three elements. The first element is that we need to achieve or improve the efficiency of the whole energy system. And one way to do that is to promote electrification wherever possible. However, we know very well that not all sectors of our economy can be electrified easily. And in this area, renewable fuels and gases come to play and will have a decisive role. This is in particular the case for the use of gas in industry, but also in transport in certain areas. Therefore, the whole Fit for 55 package aims to kind of focus with the energy transition on those sources which and those areas which where the different types of energy carriers can have the best impact. When we talk about gases, we have, for instance, set out in the Renewable Energy Directive new targets for renewable hydrogen consumption in industry, and also targets for renewable fuels, including also renewable hydrogen consumption in the transport sector. That's one important aspect. And we also have set out measures to promote the use of biomethane. So under REPower, the Commission has set out a target of 35 BCM of biomethane production by 2030. And we try to achieve this with certain measures, and one key measure is also the Renewable Energy Directive. Apart from the targets and which are set out in the Renewable Energy Directive, we also work on other instruments to promote renewable gases. For instance, we have or we are currently negotiating the gas package, where we will have the complete regulatory framework or the market framework to trade with renewable gases. Yesterday, we already achieved there a provisional agreement on the gas directive, but we still work on other measures, such as the gas regulation. But we will. We are confident that this work can be finalized before Christmas, so that we have the opportunity to finalize the work on this regulatory framework before the end of the mandate of this Parliament. That's obviously important. Other work, we are also trying to promote the uptake of renewable gases. One key aspect there is, for instance, the promotion of hydrogen. There we have recently organized the first auction for the promotion of renewable hydrogen under the hydrogen bank. This at this stage was for domestic hydrogen production, but we're also working in the area to promote imports of hydrogen. So in this framework, we are setting all the building blocks we need to make the whole or the transition from fossil-based gases to renewable and low carbon gases. And well, we are doing great steps, and hope that we finalize all the necessary parts of the regulatory framework by end of this year. So with this, I would like hand back to you.
Thank you so much. Nuno, how can we optimize these renewable sources and low carbon gases? Would you like to share with us your vision about this topic?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me and for Eurogas to invite me here to be with you. The first thing is we have seen in a number of years some myths that we had regarding gases being abolished. So we are now openly talking about hydrogen and biomethane that we didn't talk something like 3 to 4 years ago. We only talked about full electrification. So
Yes.
when time arrives that we see that we have no money to do a full electrification, we have to find out new paths. And this is something that is good about the European Commission. It's that they now have the perfect sense that low carbon gases are part of the solution. And so if we can go from a carbonized gas to a low carbon gas and still have the possibility to create jobs in Europe, well, that's good. So the European Commission now is faced with a double challenge. So they have to quickly ramp up the hydrogen and biomethane market in Europe, and still they have to ensure the European industrial competitiveness. And this is very, very important for the European Commission. So from where we stand from, what we have to do is, first we have to support infrastructures, we have to support networks, we have to support the changes in buildings, the changes in industries, so that they can receive these renewable gases.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, nowadays we already have biomethane and we already have hydrogen along with natural gas in the network. What we have to do is to fully compensate this natural gas that we now have. But history shows that we already had, so we are used to methane, we are used to biomethane, so we must get used to hydrogen. And first of all, we have to produce it. One of the things that we are looking at, it's that production, it's still not yet available. And so we have to cope with that. So the European Commission will have to put funds on the production of hydrogen, and will have to support the production of biomethane and the overall infrastructure. But the actual thing is that communities, the society is now understanding that low carbon gases are a solution. And this is something that it's quickly changing. And this is very important from the stability of the infrastructure that we now have running in Europe. Secondly, we have to make sure that these technologies that we now have are, most of them are European-based. So the technologies for biomethane, the technologies for hydrogen, grid technologies, home appliances, were actually, most of them, manufactured and created and have patents in Europe. So one of the things that the European Commission has to cope with is to make sure that these technologies stay in Europe and that they create jobs. And
difficult mission.
Well, it's a difficult mission because of the cost.
With China and competition too.
Yeah, but we have to bear in mind, for instance, you have the internal combustion engine. If we end the production of the internal combustion engine in Europe, then the technology will move. Mm-hmm. And that's a mistake that Europe has already made with solar panels. We have decided some years ago that the price of the solar panel was much cheaper in China, and then we left the opportunity to mass produce solar panels in Europe, and now we are trying to create again a cluster for solar panels. Well, that's a mistake that we think that we should not get into again, and this is true for the internal combustion engine, it's true for the gas technologies, and it's true for hydrogen and biomethane. Because if we leave the electrolyzers not being produced in Europe, then somebody is going to produce them. Fuel cells, it's the same. Batteries is the same. So we have to, if we want to create jobs and ensure the industrial competitiveness of Europe, we have to create local jobs, and of course we must at least at the beginning be able to pay a small premium in order to have those technologies produced in Europe. So what we see here is that we now have the low carbon gases technologies based in Europe. We have the know-how, we have the companies, we have current operational infrastructures,
And we have already seen that full electrification is not going to be the solution. So we have to continue this journey of convincing the European institutions to continue to move forward, because what we are seeing is that the European policy, it's changing towards low carbon gases. And that's what we expect, that in this kind of events, the sharing of knowledge is important to assure the European Commission that we are on the right track.
Excellent advice. Luís Monteiro from Bosch. How is Bosch taking advantage of this opportunity for innovation and incentives?
Okay, so I would like as well to thank Eurogas for having me here representing Bosch, and as well Floene for organizing this meeting. Thank you. So I'm a technology expert at Bosch in the heating business unit. And what Bosch is doing in a perspective of taking this opportunity is, nowadays, speaking now about the heating industry, Bosch has around about, I would say, 25% of products that are coming from that are electric, and then around about 75% are combustion products. And what Bosch is doing nowadays is, of course, putting a lot of development effort to grow the electric business, because we know that it's where there are much more business opportunities. Nevertheless, we understand that the gas grid has still a very important role to play in the future. We have millions of units installed nationwide, appliances that are operating with gas, or natural gas, or LPG, and those units are installed. Some of them were purchased at few years ago, and the park is there. So what can we do to make this park compatible, instead of trying to replace everything by electric products? Because we see here that there will be a better opportunity for the society in terms of decarbonization, and as well at a lower cost. And what we are doing is, of course, evaluating what would be the best renewable gas to do this. And currently, when we look in an immediate perspective, what can be easily available is biomethane. So we know that biomethane will not have the same energy scale as hydrogen, of course, because biomethane will be limited by the, I would say, organic waste that is available that can be converted to biomethane. But we see here many advantages. So the first one is that biomethane, of course, can be produced from organic waste, so organic waste that would end up in landfills. So then something that was mentioned earlier by Mr. Holleaux is organic waste. If we do not recovery and valorize, they will end up in the atmosphere by CO2, or even worse, methane emissions. And methane emissions is a potent greenhouse gas effect, and we need to prevent this. And one way is to valorize the waste, produce biomethane, and use this biomethane to inject it in the gas grid. And with this, basically people at home, they don't need to replace their equipment. Their equipment will be ready to operate with a renewable gas, and this, we think, it's much more effective. Okay. So we have as well look into the future, and when we see what other countries are doing, like Denmark and Germany, those are countries, I would say, with high ecological development indices. We see that they have already incorporated a lot of biomethane in their gas infrastructure. And we see as well France that is growing a lot, so they have plans that in 2030 to reach at least 10% of incorporation of biomethane in their gas grids. In Portugal and Spain, this business is still underdeveloped, but when we look to data, we see that there is a great potential for growth. Okay, so then in conclusion, I would like to stress one report from European Biogas Association. So they stated last year that there was a 20% growth in biomethane, and there are projections by them that in 2050, 62% of the gas that we will consume in Europe could be from biomethane. So we see here a huge potential that we think that needs to be seized, and with this, at the end, we will have more energy security, and we will have a faster transition for, I would say, decarbonized economy.
Thank you so much, Rui. As a researcher, investigator, how do you see all of this potential?
Yes, I see this as a big opportunity for Europe, because in Europe we don't have hydrocarbons. We are very dependent on importations from other countries. So just because we bet in renewables, this is a great opportunity to also bring the industry again to Europe, and also to allow to produce renewable gases from electrolysis, from biogas, from wastes. The opportunities are so huge that we can even create big opportunities, especially in the countries where the renewable electricity is cheaper, because this will allow to produce cheaper hydrogen as energy vector and also as a raw material to everything, even.
And do you believe Portugal is going to be a major producer and exporter of hydrogen?
Not directly exporter of hydrogen, because I think it's not very efficient, but I believe that we can become a very important country to produce green steel, because every 1 ton of green steel, you'll need 100 kilos of green hydrogen. So when you are exporting green steel, you are also exporting 100 kilos of hydrogen. So probably will become like a big exporter, like Bondalto is doing. They also export between 80 to 90% of the ammonia and nitrate ammonia production. So to export the nitrate ammonia is also always a way of exporting hydrogen, and I believe more in like that. And because you can produce cheaper hydrogen, this also will create a big attractiveness and bring some of the industries that are consuming as a raw material in the north of Europe, also bring to the Portuguese hydrogen valleys. So I see, so in this sequence, and I also believe that we need to reshape also the human resources that we are going to need also to feed all of this energy transition. Okay, so this, I believe Portugal, Spain, and the South countries, they'll win a lot with this change and with this big opportunity.
Thank you. Camila, let's talk a little about grid too. We need a comprehensive approach to infrastructure, pipelines, import facilities, and storage.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you also for inviting me to this meeting and for the possibility of presenting our vision. So we are very lucky because in our panel we have representatives of all stakeholders, and we have opportunity to have a very complementary vision. So I will mainly address what Bernd has said at the beginning regarding the framework that is being put forward. So we have indeed a very good framework already for the production of hydrogen. We have targets for the production, domestic production, as well as production imports from abroad. So that was provided by REPowerEU. And so that means that basically we want to produce 10 million renewable hydrogen domestically and import another 10 million from abroad. We also have a very good financial framework that, as Bernd said, is provided, for example, through the first and the second auction that will happen next year under the Hydrogen Bank. And then we also have a gas package, which was directive, which was agreed last night. We still are waiting for the regulation that will be negotiated on December 8th. So we have major big puzzles of the equation already in place. And however, I wanted to stress the importance, and already that also been mentioned at the beginning, at the importance of the infrastructure. This is something that we are really trying to put forward, mainly because when we organized one of the biggest events regarding hydrogen last week, that was the European Hydrogen Week in Brussels, this was the message that was one of the most frequent among 13 high-level policy sessions that were organized and open to audience. And precisely many invited speakers hammered home the issue that we need to have a very strong infrastructure backbone in order to be able to benefit from the potential of low carbon as well as renewable hydrogen. And this also means that there is a need for a very strong commitment, a firm political decision that needs to be taken regarding the rollout of this infrastructure. Otherwise, we will not be able to solve what's called the chicken and egg problem in the EU. So basically, the chicken and egg, it means that as long as we do not have production, there is no demand for infrastructure, and vice versa. As long as we don't have infrastructure, there is a difficulty to have enough offtake agreement because of uncertainty that there will be possibility to get the hydrogen to the demand points. So why do we need so much infrastructure right now? There are several points that I just wanted to mention. The first of all is that when we look at the map of supply and demand of renewable hydrogen, there is a very clear mismatch between supply and demand for different regions. And in order to precisely do what has been described, for example, for Portugal to be able to valorize its hydrogen, not only hydrogen production, but hydrogen embedded in, for example, steel production as well as in ammonia, we will need infrastructure to transport that to places where there is a largest demand for it. And for example, today we know that will be countries, for example, like the Netherlands as well as the Germany, where there are key hubs for the consumption of renewable and low carbon hydrogen. So that's the first point. We also need to be able to transport hydrogen because we have new rules that were not mentioned by Bernd, is that we also, in addition to renewable directive, we've obtained from the Commission the adoption of delegated acts on renewable fuels of non-biological origin, which define which type of hydrogen can be considered as renewable hydrogen. And those rules specify that from 2030, there would have to be a hourly correlation between the production of hydrogen, renewable hydrogen, and as well as the facility that provides renewable electricity, which means in practice that for those who, for industrial sites that would like to produce hydrogen on site, this will limit the availability of hydrogen that should be supplied on a very regular basis. Therefore, they need to be connected to the infrastructure first, so the infrastructure such as pipelines, but also to storage. And this is extremely important and the message that we really want to put forward and put there. And also, as I said, the infrastructure puzzle needs to be complete, meaning that we not only need pipelines to transport hydrogen, to import it and export it among several countries, but also we need import facilities such as ports as well as ammonia crackers in ports, and we need storage. Without storage, the equation just does not work. And then also there are very clear signals that we need to be able to fund the infrastructure. The current support schemes and what we've already just mentioned, the Hydrogen Bank actually finances production that does not provide support schemes for the deployment of infrastructure. And also today, as we speak, the Commission has published its sixth list of projects of common interest. And for the first time, we see that those selected projects not only cover electricity transport networks as well as CCS transport networks, as well as storage networks, but also hydrogen. And we are very happy to see this development. It's very positive. However, it's limited in its scope in the sense that it does not only a percentage of projects that were submitted were selected, and also because the funding is limited and it does not enable to indeed finance the entire European hydrogen backbone.
Camilla, thank you so much for your vision or presentation. Bernd Kupker, last week von der Leyen announced the first European bank for hydrogen. The idea is to secure the necessary initial financing to cover the risk of buying and selling green hydrogen. It is an important advance?
Of course. I mean, the European Hydrogen Bank is, in our view, a key measure to ensure the offtake of hydrogen projects, because it is designed in a way that it provides support not only for smaller or on a one time frame, but for a longer period of time, which really then allows for investors to make the plans and to set up the necessary or to implement the project. So we think that this is a very important project, and we also hope that the member states get also involved with funding in the facilities which are created to broaden the financial basis for the hydrogen bank.
Thank you so much. And now I have two audience questions. The first one, in the residential sector, besides awareness, we have a clear problem with skills and man labor. Is there any initiatives running right now to solve this lack of professionals? Could you help me, Nuno, with this question?
Yeah, I think I can. Actually, I don't think that that's a problem, and I'll explain why. Because what we have now, it's a field force that knows how to work with gas. So they have the technical skills, they know what safety means, they know how to weld, they know how to dig, they know how to construct pipes, they know how to operate them. What we have to do is to upscale those skills for low carbon gases, but it's an upscale. We don't have to create a whole new career for these professionals. What we are trying to do is to rest them assured that if they continue to work in the gas field, they will not, there is no lack of jobs. What we cannot endanger, it's the fact we cannot put in danger this low carbon gas sector by facilitating the movements from low carbon gases or gas to electrification. So we must have two parallel running field forces on the field to assure that we have two technical skills to cope with different technologies. So I don't.
So we just need a reskilling and an upskilling.
Yeah, we need to rescale that. We don't, what we must not do is to lose them. We have to rest them assured. Please stay on the market. We will help you to upscale your skills, and don't worry, you will have jobs. So I don't think that actually that we have a lack of field force. Yes, everybody has lack of field force, if you know, here in Europe. So
yes,
there are a number of fields that don't have workers. So what we have to do is to rest them assured that don't worry, we are doing our job and we are doing what we can as infrastructure operators. That's what I do. What we are trying to say is to the governments, don't worry, our job is to rest you assured that the technical feasibility of this assets will be there when we have low carbon gases, and we have the field force. So in that matter, we are not concerned. We have the skills to make that upskilling that we need.
Luis, do you agree with Nuno? You are not concerned too?
I would say it depends. So if the governments are willing to operate this transition in a very fast way, and this means that we need to change the equipments that are already installed, I think, yeah, we will face a problem. It's something that is being discussed not really in Portugal, but in other countries like in Germany, because now Germany, they are pretty much changing from boilers to gas boilers to heat pumps. And yeah, they see this difficulty that now installed professionals that were used to install boilers are not, I would say, qualified to install heat pumps, and they need to adjust it. So basically they will need to do a specific training to be able to do it. This of course will take time, and then it depends on the speed that you want to replace. So if you want to replace at a high speed, then of course we will be limited by the number of persons that can do this. That's why when in my introduction, if we can use renewable gas that are already compatible with the installed park, I would say that the effort is not so much on the installation, but on the production of renewable gas. Mm-hmm. And maybe then the scale of the effect of one person in the global perspective is much bigger. So the leverage it's much bigger. So what I want to say is that the effort of one person in producing methane maybe can affect 10 or 20 installed equipments.
Yes. Rui, our professor and academic see this question.
Yes, I see here that the transition will happen for sure, and the transition for renewable gases will happen for sure. And some of the difference, they are not so huge compared to the fossils. So we are going to need to requalify some professionals, but will not be impossible. It will be it will take time. But in universities, I can see that my students, they already search for subjects in the master thesis just to study these fields because they know they are going to find jobs. Okay?
But this time is compatible with the reality of the market?
Yes. I believe because they want to learn more about electrolysis, what is electrolyzer, mm-hmm. What are the compatibilities of the hydrogen with the infrastructure, with the natural gas. They want to learn that. So I used to have a big demand in terms of students. They want to become engineers, mechanical engineers, just because they know they are going to find jobs in these fields. So I see that's why I see that we need to do that. And this is going to happen because it will be cheaper, okay? This is not because there are some regulations. We are going to move to renewables because it will be cheaper because we are using infinite resources like wind, water, and solar energy. And because the solar panels, the electrolyzers, they are getting cheaper, and it's easy to produce these renewable gases. This is an economical transition. And the future human resources that these companies that are going to be created, they are going to need lots of human resources. So I see that we should be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I have to give the stage to the audience, and I have another question to the audience. The costs of electrifying consumption, since that are connected to the gas network, are very costly for consumers. Since the most rational use of existing gas distribution network is, or wouldn't it be important for biomethane producers to be forced to put their gas into the network? Well, big question. No.
Well, in Europe we don't force anybody, so I wouldn't say to force them, but to incentivize them, yes, I think it would be reasonable. To incentivize means that they would be willing to put that gas into the network.
Yes.
Because it makes economic sense. So I wouldn't put it as to force them, but to incentivize them. I think it would be a good measure. I think we could do that. Yes.
Yes, Luis, do you agree? You could do that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have that much to add, so I agree that in Europe things move with incentives and yeah, the right how to say it, yeah, incentives to move in a certain direction and not by forcing people to do one thing or the other. But yeah, I agree.
Camilla, would you like to answer to this question too?
Not necessarily to this question. However, I would like to go back to the previous one if I'm allowed.
Well, we just have a few minutes to the end of this panel, but if you are very quickly, yes.
So very quickly, just wanted to say that when it comes to hydrogen, it will be more also about reskilling, but also about creating new opportunities. And just to give you figures, because they are figures regarding the potential for jobs creation, we know that the green hydrogen economy will provide 18% of the global energy demand and could generate as much as 30 million jobs by 2050 globally. So the figures are quite staggering, but then it will be both, as it was the case, as previous speaker said, it will be both case of indeed reskilling those who are already working in the gas sector and have good competences, also as learning about new aspects of operating a hydrogen pipeline and hydrogen equipment.
And what do you expect about the hydrogen bank?
As Hydrogen Europe?
Yes.
Well, we are very happy with the result that we've obtained. Many of our asks have been taken into account when the first auction was published. So we are very happy with the level of the premium that has been decided, which is 4.5 euro per kilogram of hydrogen for the production. Now, I think we are basically having the same griefs as any industry in Europe. We need more. And as I said, we need more, mainly, we know already we will have second auction next year. So in total, we will be able to benefit from 3 billion euro. However, there are some conditions for the financing which are too stringent. For example, when you benefit from financing under the European Hydrogen Bank, you cannot benefit from any other form of state aid, which definitely restricts access for some projects who already benefited from state aid and would like to also benefit from that opportunity. The second, I would say, limitation is, as Bernd said at the beginning, for now we are just looking at the domestic market and the international leg is still missing, and we are working actively and providing feedback to the Commission. So regarding the design of this international leg, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a domestic target, but we also have international imports target, and this European Hydrogen Bank should enable us to fulfill and to realize this target. So it's a very good beginning. However, 800 million euros for the first auction, it will enable us to achieve maybe 0.8 of the target that we need. So it's minimal, still minimal, and we still need more. I mean, one of the key asks we have today is for the public authorities to actually commit and to make sure that this will be driven by private sector with no doubt. However, we need public sector to step in and to guarantee these investments. Today, investments in infrastructure and in production facilities are too risky when it comes to hydrogen. That's why we only have 4% of projects today which are ready for deployment, only 4%, and that really needs to increase if we are to reach the targets for 2030.
Thank you, Camilla. Bernd, the last question. Many ask if hydrogen will need a long and big public support, like what happened with wind and solar energy. Will this the new reality?
Well, I think now in the beginning it is absolutely necessary to support renewable hydrogen, but we are confident that this will over time change. We will have several different developments which go in parallel. On the one hand, with increased investment into projects, we will reduce the capex cost, in particular for the electrolyzers. significantly over time. So we have seen this for wind and for solar, and now for wind and solar we see that they are absolutely competitive with conventional fossil energy sources. And we hope that this will also happen for hydrogen. We are confident that this can happen for hydrogen. Of course, we need for that to have the infrastructure in place, which allows a competitive production of hydrogen. This is both the infrastructure which is needed to produce the hydrogen in the places where it is where production is most competitive. Therefore, we need infrastructure. But also, well, as I said, we need to have a reduction of cost in general. But we are confident that with the increase of the industry, this will happen.
Thank you so much. And we have to close this discussion, this panel. Thank you to all the speakers. Bernd, Camila, Nuno, Luís, Rui, muito obrigada. Thank you so much. Please, you can return to your seats and we'll advance. And now I ask to join me on this stage for the closing speech, Jerónimo Cunha, Director of Directorate General for Energy and Geology. Welcome.
Obrigado. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, first of all, I would like to thank for the kind invitation that Eurogas and Floene made to GGG to be here today with you. So, I would like to share with you what is the Portuguese vision regarding the opportunities arising from the necessary energy transition, particularly on what concerns the role of renewable gases in our decarbonization strategy. In 2016, Portugal took the commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, placing Portugal among those who advocate greater ambition in climate action. From ambition, we moved to action, particularly in the last 4 years, and I'm pleased to say that we are on the right track to achieve our goals. We are translating ambition into practice by delivering regulatory measures which facilitate the development of new markets and new clusters such as renewable gases, where Portugal offers competitive advantages. Let it be no doubt that Portugal is doing more than what is required to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal and to deliver the energy transition that our economies need. Behind my words is a proven track record. We may be a small country in size, but what we lack in size, we make up in ambition and delivery of results, particularly on the energy sector. In recent years, and particularly because of the war in Ukraine that triggered an historic inflation, the growing focus on renewables is indeed mandatory. And it allowed us to mitigate the rise in energy prices and accommodate its impacts on consumers. That is why the Portuguese government is making significant efforts regarding administrative simplification. In the beginning of 2022, we simplified procedures and shortened the licensing deadlines for renewables and hydrogen projects. And recently, we adopted new measures to further simplify and accelerate renewables, namely in what regards to environmental impact assessment and industrial emission requirements. The work that we are doing in the simplification of procedures will continue in the next years. Although Portugal is already one of the fastest permitting procedures in the EU, in the short term, will further enhance and speed up permit granting procedures for renewable projects, including renewable gases. Regarding the opportunities arising from the necessary energy transition, I must emphasize the role of renewable gases, which is a priority both European level and national level. Hydrogen, particularly green hydrogen, contributes to accelerate the decarbonization path, especially on those sectors where electrification is not feasible or not cost-effective. I strongly believe, that a country from Southern Europe like Portugal can have an active role and push forward with the broad use of hydrogen, becoming a key element in accomplishing Europe's decarbonization goals. As an ambitious and innovative country with a robust track record in renewables, we bring forward our commitment and our current state of play in the hydrogen field. We believe that Portugal, will be a key element to push forward the broad use of hydrogen because we have the right resources, very competitive conditions both for solar and wind, and a strategic geographical location that facilitates exports to the main consumption sites. The need to replace natural gas imports from Russia has revived concerns about European energy security and reevaluated biomethane production technologies. At national level, this industry is still in an early stage of development, with Portugal being one of the EU countries with the lowest production level when compared to other European countries. This is why it is important to reinforce our commitment to this sector and to promote the development of this strategic sector. Portugal's commitment will involve promoting the biomethane market as a sustainable way of reducing imports of natural gas, taking full advantage of the abundant endogenous residual that exists in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, governments have an important role to play in the energy transition process, whether by setting clear paths in strategic planning, by coordinating actions with other countries, or by establishing regulatory environments and incentives to facilitate investments and operation of companies. This is particularly true in the energy sector. We are in the process of reviewing our roadmap to carbon neutrality and our national energy and climate plan, which will already consider the current global context, meaning that a major reinforcement in terms of goals and ambitions is expected. There can be no doubt that Portugal is doing everything in its power and redoubling its efforts to remain at the forefront of the energy transition, and these plans define the main lines of our environmental and energy policy where this ambition must be clear. In this context, the review of our national energy and climate plan reflects the government's firm commitment to accelerate climate and energy transition, energy security, and the country's industrialization, ensuring future jobs and green energy at competitive prices. This is a complex exercise between those who demand more speed and those who can call on us to be more cautious in a country that has all the conditions to be a leader in the energy transition. This will include, this revision of our plan will include a diverse range of measures, among which stand the improvement in licensing procedures for renewable energies, the focus on renewable gases, energy savings through energy efficiency, decarbonization of transport, among many others. I would like just to highlight a few important aspects underlying this complex exercise that involves areas as far apart as agriculture, industry, energy production, infrastructure, including consumer protection. This is a very, you must understand that revising a plan like this in a context like we are today, it's really complex. It's not be considered a pure planning exercise. It's more an exercise of combining different realities on one specific plan. That's why in the end, not all will agree, but we'll do our best to accommodate all the realities. So first of all, the level of ambition is aligned with the long-term objective of achieving carbon neutrality, and the anticipation of the goal of carbon neutrality to 2045 is being studied as announced in the climate basic law, and the results of this study will be known by 2025. A very significant reinforcement of renewable energy, which will translate into at least 49% renewables in gross final energy consumption. We intend to double the installed capacity production from renewable sources, namely solar and wind. We'll need to revise our national hydrogen strategy to reinforce the expected electrolyzer capacity by 2030. A national strategy for biomethane is expected very soon. It's expected to have a public consultation in the next weeks or months. Network infrastructures, electrical and gas, will be subjected to a careful and appropriate planning to allow this strategic resource to be managed efficiently in favor of the country's sustainable growth. On the consumption side, measures to encourage the decarbonization of transport, industry and buildings will be reinforced, creating new instruments or improving existing ones. And particular attention will be paid to families with policies adjusted to their needs. in the short term, and in practical terms, we can expect the results on a second, and this is in the short term, it's for the public that we have today on gases. We will have the results on a second call of the PRR to support renewable gas productions. The GEG has already completed its assessment, and the final decision from the Environmental Fund is awaited. A new call, the third call with REPowerEU funds to support renewable gas production, will be launched as soon as possible. We already did our job at the GEG and did the new call. We will begin work to review the legal framework for cogeneration, and it's important to look again at the legal framework for the gas sector and to adapt it to the current reality. And the so awaited auction for renewable gases, everything is fully operational, and we are waiting the okay from the government to move ahead with this auction, and we already have the platform fully operational to deal with this auction. And we are working with the various entities in the sector, from the regulator and the other entities, on several different fronts to streamline procedures for the benefit of consumers and companies. A word about the GEG as the main licensing authority, which is often seen as an obstacle to the development due to insufficient resources to respond to the sector. We'll have new human resources, in total of 120 new employees to be expected to start to enter this year, and by the end of the year we'll have open a procedure for around 100 new vacancies to be fully closed until the first half of 2024. We will reinforce our IT resources that will speed up procedures and reduce response times. In particular context, it is particularly important to create the unit for renewable energy provided in the PRR, which, in addition to a dedicated platform for the licensing of renewable projects, will allow for the improvement to improve significantly the time of the licensing of projects. And we are also evaluating the various possibilities to reinforce and update our organization to respond to the sector's challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, the energy transition in our country represents a 75 billion euro investment in green energy production projects. This investment will have a multiplier effect both upstream as downstream. And despite the increased challenge that the pandemic and war represent, the government's commitment to carbon neutrality remains resolute. We will continue to pursue the objectives of the European Green Deal and the achievement of the energy transition. Energy transition is not a burden or a cost. It's an opportunity to, with the proper framework, the right investments and policy measures, put humanity in a greener and more sustainable path, and without leaving no one behind, improve our quality of life. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we can work together and to resolve our challenges. Thank you very much.
Obrigada. Thank you, Jerónimo Cunha. It was a pleasure participating in Eurogas and Floene conference, regional conference here in Lisbon. Thanks to all the speakers, and thanks to all the audience in Lisbon and online. Have a good day.